Fun topic in that we're going to take an acronym for 10 health laws. They're a little bright. I could use a visor. Yeah, I'll get used to it, but you know. So we're going to take an acronym for health laws. There's 10 moral laws in the Bible, and so we're going to look at 10 health laws in the Bible, and then we're going to kind of look at them briefly, and then we're going to apply it to a time of disaster. So, all right, so the first one, we're just going to go through them, and then we're going to look at them individually. So the first one is healthy diet, then comes exercise, air, light, temperance, hygiene, logos, which is the Greek word for Jesus. It's the living word. The attitude, water, and sabbatical. So that's health laws. We'll start with healthy diet. There's a bunch of R's. So we're going to look at these R's of the healthy diet. First of all, there is return to the Genesis diet. The Genesis diet we find in Genesis at the time of the creation, and God gave to us fruits, grains, nuts, and vegetables, the herb-bearing seed, right? So we want to try to return to that as much as possible. I realize it's not as easy as it was in the garden when you could just walk up and grab something off of a tree very easily, but that's the original diet. Then we want to try to eat a whole food diet. We want it to be simple, and we want to have variety, not just, we want high variety overall and low variety for your meal. We want to eat clean. Where's the first place that we saw clean in the Bible? Genesis? And what was in relation?
The animals, the white.
That's right, the animals. That was the first time. Were people eating meat before the flood? They were killing, but that really wasn't part of their diet then, was it? So the first time we see clean and unclean is when all of a sudden these animals start walking into the ark. And there's clean animals, there's more of them. And I wonder if Noah knew why, right? You're going to have to eat those. And then there were unclean animals and not so many of those. So that's the first time we see clean and unclean. And then in Leviticus, it's very in detail, like told what is clean and what is unclean. So clean things they chew the cud and they have a split hoof. So what would be clean that we know about? Beef, those cute little cows. So those are clean meats. And birds such as chickens and turkeys are clean. And then another thing that we sometimes forget about as far as a biblical principle is fat and blood are not to be eaten. If it has fat or if it has blood in it, if it hasn't been drained of blood, that is not considered clean. So those are, and that was something that when Noah got off the ark, was there anything to eat of vegetable matter? There really wasn't. The bird brought, a dove brought back a leaf, but where were the olives? They didn't have olives yet, so they had to eat clean animals until they could again get some food. And that was part of what was allowed. Retaining God's genetic code. This is something that's probably come more to light recently. That genetic code. Wow. So God said in Leviticus 19:9, "You shall keep my statutes. Thou shalt not let thy cattle gender with a diverse kind. Thou shalt not sow thy field with mingled seed." Now this isn't saying plant a tomato, plant a carrot. They're not saying don't mingle different plants. They're saying don't mingle your seed. So, and then another place that's very interesting is in Isaiah. It says, "Because thou hast forgotten the God of thy salvation, and hast not been mindful of the rock of thy strength, therefore shalt thou plant pleasant plants, and thou shalt set it with strange slips." That is just a very strange way of putting things. In other words, they're saying, when you forget God, you're going to end up planting these pleasant plants. They're going to have strange slips in them. That things are just not going to go right genetic-wise with your plants. And it says, in the day thou shalt make thy plant to grow, and in the morning thou shalt make thy seed to flourish, but the harvest shall be a heap in the day of grief and of desperate sorrow. And that's kind of what we're seeing now, is that genetic code that God put into life, the seeds, into ourselves, is being kind of disrupted, mixed around, and bad things are happening because of it. Cancers, many different things have come out of it. Another R is ready the digestion. So you want to prime your body to receive the food. If you drink 2 glasses of water, 20 minutes before you eat, it's going to increase the mucus barrier in your stomach. The pH of your stomach can drop down to 2, and it doesn't kill you. I mean, if you put 2 on the outside of your skin, you're going to get burned, a pH of 2. That's very, very acidic. But your stomach deals with acidity of 2, and that's healthy. It's how it breaks things down. So how do you protect yourself from that? You have this mucus barrier. And if you get dehydrated, that mucus barrier gets thin. And so you want to drink at least 2 glasses of water before you eat, 20 minutes before you eat. That will increase the mucus barrier of your stomach. It's going to protect you from that acid. It's going to make that acid be where it needs to be and able to be mobilized and used. You need to chew your food thoroughly. You need to mash it and mix it in order for it to be optimally digested. Another R. Sure, sorry. Another R is rest. Rest, there's a time to eat and there's a time not to eat. So when you eat, just kind of make a mental note, and you need to wait at least 5 hours between the time you eat and before you eat again. That's going to allow your body to digest and get it where it needs to get, and then it's going to be able to rest. So when you're in crisis, remember that it's okay not to eat for a little while, but when you do eat, allow space for digestion. Routine, you want to eat at the same time every day. Your body's going to prepare by producing enzymes and acids that make you better able to digest. So if you eat at the same time every day, your body will prepare. Are you supposed to be here? Am I in the right place? Okay, sorry. Okay, sorry. You looked like you were ready to. Okay. And then another R is, remember that eating is relational. God created us to be the stewards of the earth. So we want to be compassionate in how we eat. We want to be sustainable in how we eat. And that becomes even more important in a crisis. If you only have a couple beans left, maybe you better be planting one of those. Or if you're going to eat those beans, maybe you better sprout them first for a day. You're going to get a lot more nutrition, and then chew them well. So in times of crisis, what you want to do is eat low on the food chain to avoid foods that can bioaccumulate both radioactivity and toxicity. So if you are eating a plant, if you're eating spinach, you're going to get a lot less toxicity, you're going to get a lot less radioactivity if there's a radioactive fallout than if you're eating the cow that just ate all of that spinach that might have a little bit of that toxicity on it. So eat low on the food chain. Don't eat animals that died without draining blood. Preferably don't eat animals, because that's pretty high up on the food chain in an emergency. And then don't eat unclean animals. One of the things that I have done through the years is read people's accounts, like people will give their experiences when they're in prison. And there's certain people that are in prison and they make it through, and there's certain people that don't. Of course, we don't hear from the people that don't make it through, but the people that make it through, there's certain things that you hear from them. And one guy I'm thinking of in China, they would force him to eat pork, and he knew the difference between clean and unclean. And he would actually throw the pork up, and he would go out and collect herbs, and that's what he would eat. And it was a real horrific prison. He was one of 2 that survived. That was in China, and it was bad conditions. Other places you hear where they're eating dogs or whatever they can grab as they go by, and the disease is just horrific in some of those prisons. So, okay, this is really important. If you have limited food, and this is, I'm being very generous with you, chew your food at least 30 times. You need to do that when it's not crisis. But when you're in crisis and you have limited food, you really need to slow down and chew your food. The prisoners with severe restriction that survived when no one else did, they were chewing their food 150 times. Try it next time you eat. I know I get to 15 and I'm like, wow, what's left? So it's something you have to train yourself to do. You have to chew 30 times without swallowing, right? And that gets the digestion, the products of digestion started. I'm sorry, it will get the amylase and the different enzymes started. So in times of crisis, try to reestablish a routine. Remember, if you're under stress, when some crisis has just happened, it's okay to not eat for a little while. It might even be better for your body not to eat when you're under crisis. If you're under crisis constantly, then yeah, you're going to have to prioritize that eating. But if you're just gone into a crisis, it's probably best to just not eat, because it's not healthy to try and force your digestion to work when your body is in a state of adrenaline stress. Come on in, there's plenty of room. So finally, remember the words in crisis. Yeah.
Could you explain why that's important?
Right.
To chew your food 30 times,
Mm-hmm.
times or whatever.
Sure.
Because to me, it just appears like the more you chew it, the more you have to eat because it's already half broken down. So what's the reason or science behind that? Why
Mm-hmm.
chew so many
Mm-hmm.
times?
Well,
Okay, let's repeat the question.
okay, I'm sorry. The question is, if I'm understanding the question is, can you explain more about why it is that we need to chew our food? What benefit is that? Is that kind of the synopsis? So in your saliva glands in your mouth, you secrete amylase, which starts to break down your starch. And so that you're not going to get amylase again until you get past your stomach, because your stomach is dealing with hydrochloric acid. So you're going to, if you get your digestion started in your mouth and mix the food really, really well, then basically what that's going to do is let you get more nutrition from it. It's going to break your nutrients down. Not to mention there's a whole science out there of, well, there should be more science out there, but when you open a garlic clove and expose it to air, certain things start happening, chemical processes start happening, and I don't even think we understand it fully, but when you take something into your body that the Lord created, and it's this very unique fingerprint of nutrition that only, everything's different. A strawberry is one thing, a piece of, cantaloupe is going to be another, and you start chewing it, it's being exposed to these chemicals that the Lord created it to be exposed to, and things start happening, and that break this down, and the combinations are going to start combining, and it's going to be healthier for you. It's how God created it.
So you're going to be satisfied sooner too, so it's probably a good form of weight control, isn't it?
It is, and I know for people who have like irritable bowel syndrome and things like that, where things are just going through very fast, and you start, you get a stool sample or something from them and send it in, and it's like, well, there's corn in there, we can tell what you ate, yesterday, or, and so that's not good. You want, if you can see it come out in the manner it went in, you're not digesting it, so that can help, your body to digest. Did that sort of help explain, Gwen? Okay. So, and so you get amylase from your mouth as well as lower down in your digestion. So a really good promise to remember when it comes to diet is what Jesus responded to the devil in the Bible when he told him, it's written that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word of God. So sometimes we get focused on, got to do this, got to do that, got to do this. But in times of crisis, we need to kind of step back and say, what's important is that we're not living by bread alone. It's not just our food. God is going to sustain us as well. So that's an important one for Luke 4. All right. Just getting a picture. Got it? Okay, next one. Were you ready? Okay. So the next one's exercise. So health laws, right? The next one's exercise that we're going to focus on. And so man was made by God to labor 6 days a week. So we were made to exercise. So exercise is a must. So I'm going to look at you could have a whole day of lecture on this, but let's look at 2 amazing results of exercise that will motivate us to do it. So one is mitochondria. Let's look at the effects of exercise on mitochondria. Mitochondria is a very, very tiny organelle in your body. It's found in large numbers in most cells where the biochemical process of respiration and energy production occurs. So anywhere where we have to get things broken down is where you take your energy and you turn it into usable. You take your fuel and you turn it into usable energy. So exercise causes the mitochondria to increase, both in quantity, so the numbers, and in quality. So this is going to help your mitochondria to work better. I have people who have mitochondrial disorders, that come to me in my practice. Sometimes we have to diagnose that. This is what is going wrong. When you don't have energy, then you can't do anything. I mean, usually before we figure out they have mitochondrial disorders, we've chased our tail for a long time because we're like, oh, it looks like your endocrine system's not working. Oh, everything looks okay. Oh, well, it looks like something else isn't working. It looks like this isn't working. And then finally we're like, and we run another test that looks at how their mitochondria works, and we're like, oh, well, if your mitochondria isn't working, everything's going to underfunction. And so we want our mitochondria to work. We want it to work well. So that's one thing that can help is exercise. So after you exercise, it's going to help you for 8 hours. That's where the greatest effect. So right after you exercise. So if you get up and exercise in the morning, then you're going to have that benefit all day long with your mitochondria. It's going to help your brain work better. It's going to help your muscles have more energy. It's going to just it's a good tonic, right, in the morning. But the effects, while they peak in 8 hours, then they continue for another 24 hours. And there are other effects that can continue for 2 weeks. Let's look at another thing to look at is circulation. The effects of a 12-minute burst of exercise was studied in Harvard in 2020. And I kind of got a kick out of the report of this because it was a picture of some man. He had a mask on his face and he was running down these steps. And I was like, wow, that's a hard time to study exercise when you have to wear a mask. But anyways, I don't know if they actually wore masks. So that's just how they did it in the picture. So 12 minutes. They did a burst of 12 minutes. So you think about, sometimes when we think about exercise, we get overwhelmed. It's like, oh, I have to get out and I'm supposed to run a mile, but and I've got to work up and I got to keep going and I got to, exercise for a whole hour, and it just seems overwhelming and we just give up before we start. But when you think for 12 minutes, just 12 minutes, that can have such a big difference. So Gregory Lewis, the senior author of this study, said what was striking to us was the effects of a brief bout of exercise can have on the circulating levels of metabolites that govern such key bodily functions as insulin resistance, so those are your diabetics, oxidative stress, vascular reactivity, inflammation, and longevity. So they were looking at all these different things, just 12 minutes. So you just get up, run around the block, take a walk, just 12 minutes. Don't let it get too overwhelming to where you don't do it. So when it comes to applying this law to times of crisis, you're going to have to be fit and ready before the disaster occurs. right? You can't just get fit instantly. So this takes daily preparation. So every day we need those 12-minute bursts to improve our mitochondrial function, to improve our circulation. Now let's look at air. That's the A of health. So air is essential, and you need it day and night. That means you need to sleep with your windows open, right? And you need to have circulation. You can't rebreathe expelled air and expect to maintain health. So you have to have a well-ventilated home and bedroom. Air composition is 21% oxygen. So it's 0.4% carbon dioxide. The air, that's what we're breathing in. That's what we breathe in. So the air we breathe out contains 16% oxygen. So look at the difference there. 21% oxygen you're breathing in, you breathe out 16% oxygen. So we just got how much? 5% we used. That's how you can go and do CPR on somebody and they survive, even on just 16% oxygen. It's 0.4 when you breathe it in, and when you breathe out, the air contains 4% carbon dioxide. Okay, so that is very, very significant. So we're going to create a crisis. So we're going to just give a little scenario. If two people are stayed in a 10 by 10 airtight room for 12 hours, does this possibly happen? This actually happens fairly often. Oxygen would decrease to 18.6%. That's what you're breathing in, right? And then you're breathing out even less than that, right? So, and the carbon dioxide would increase to about 1.8%. Now we know that if your heart stops and you need to be resuscitated, that you can be resuscitated on 18% oxygen, right? Because if somebody's breathing this in. So that's not really the most concerning thing. The most concerning thing is that carbon dioxide. That is, you cannot function when the carbon dioxide goes up. That's much more critical than the oxygen levels dropping, is the carbon dioxide going up. So carbon dioxide levels as low as 2 to 3% are toxic in the body. If you're working in an environment with 2 to 3%, they're going to be, OSHA's going to be jumping up and down, and they're going to want you to do something about that. So that's too high. You have to have fresh circulating air in your workplace at all times. One thing to think about is plants. If you have plants in your home, they're going to be scrubbing out that carbon dioxide and giving you oxygen. So that's one way to offset it. You just have to be careful that you don't get molds in those plants in your house. So things to remember in times of disaster relating to fresh air. Don't start generators inside. In disasters, that's a common way people die. Because they're like, well, I got a generator in the backyard, let's put it in the garage, and they kill themselves. Avoid using camp stoves inside. I'm guilty of that. I've done that before and had like a bad headache for a couple of days because those camp stoves really put off a lot of CO2. And so use camp stoves outside. If you must be in a basement due to tornadoes, bombing, or bombs, or some sort of crisis, you need to find some way to get some fresh air into the area, or an air purifier. I don't know how you'd run that, because if you don't have electricity, but you need to try and get some fresh air into the environment. Don't wear masks unless the benefit outweighs the toxicity. And that's, remember with the, when we're breathing out about 18%. And then you're breathing that back in, and then you're breathing out less and less, and you can have a pretty toxic situation right away. If you aren't sick, wear a venting mask if you're in a situation. That's what I do. If I'm with a patient with COVID or something, I wear a venting mask. I know it's politically incorrect, but I'm not sick, and I want to be politically correct, but if that means I can't vent, then we have to kind of draw the line. And wear a mask that actually works. Like, if you're just wearing a mask for political correctness, that's really pretty dangerous. If you're with somebody and you need to wear a mask, wear one that works then. Wear a mask. We wear a mask that has silver and charcoal in it, and I vent if I'm not sick. So that's just something to keep in mind as far as keeping healthy in a environment where masks are becoming more common, right? Let's look at light. Light. Sunshine specifically. Our earth and our sun were created, or our sun, not really our earth, was created by God to emit light rays that are essential to our health. So ultraviolet light helps us to produce vitamin D. It produces tryptophan in our skin, which is the precursor to serotonin, so it makes us feel better. That's why you feel so good when you're out in the sunshine. So these are just, sunshine is part of what we interact with as people on this earth. And we were made from this earth, right? God took that dirt and he made us. We are part of this earth. This is, I think we sometimes forget that. Like, we're supposed to be the caretakers of this earth. So using sunshine in times of crisis, these are a couple of points. 20 minutes of bright sunshine kills the coronavirus. Sorry to focus on that, but that's just kind of like what our life is about a lot, right? So well, how does it affect the coronavirus? Well, 20 minutes of bright sunshine kills the coronavirus. If you can get your bedding out and clothing out in the sunshine and let it dry or whatever for 8 hours, that is very sterilizing for killing off pathogens. Use it for those who are sick. Get people who are sick out in the sunshine. Use it to sterilize. I want to give you just a quick little info on the SODIS method, which is not called that because you use a soda bottle often, but because I don't remember what it stands for, but it is, you can take 2 liters or less of clear water in a clear glass or plastic bottle, right? And you close it up and stick it out in the sunshine. If you have bright sunshine, which you don't have here, it's only 6 hours. But if you have even just a cloudy place, just leave it out for 2 days because it's going to get the ambient ultraviolet. It's going to come through. And so 2 days if it's cloudy. So remember that over here. Just get your water bottles out there, and that will sterilize. I mean, I like the thought of having maybe some iodine or different things, but if you don't have that and you have a container, just get your container out there and you're going to have water. You have to have water. Water's coming up. After hygiene. So temperance is abstaining from that which is harmful and using in moderation that which is good. So what we want to do is just on a regular basis, you want to avoid substances and activities that stimulate or suppress your frontal lobe or prevent the normal function of your nerves. So complete abstinence from alcohol, narcotics, cigarettes, non-herbal teas, because caffeine is a stimulant. It stimulates and then just drops you. It uses up that energy and then leaves you in a state of exhaustion. And coffee. It's nice if you start these things, start abstaining from these things before the crisis. Otherwise, you're going to have the crisis as well as a big headache for a couple of days. So there's a couple of different Bible verses that go along with that. Proverbs 31 talks about it's not for kings to drink wine or princes to have strong drink. And that's because if you're going into a situation of crisis, you have a choice. You just medicate yourself and say, hey, I'm just going to get through this by not caring. Or if you want to survive, you better stay away from those substances and say, okay, I'm going to survive this. And I'm not going to do this by altering my mind so that I can't think about how to get out of this situation. So that's a quick temperance. And then we have hygiene. Hygiene, cleanliness, is next to godliness. This is what Ellen White, a health reformer, one of her famous quotes. And so remember, and my husband's great on this. We go camping, we go anywhere, and he's like, oh, gotta have a shower. that daily shower, So I mean, we've had to drive like ridiculous places, like to find a shower or find some water, and here you are camping and you think you're ready to go to bed and we have to go find some, good thing it's dark, I can't see how this water looks, or, I'm wondering what's going to get me in the water. But anyways, there we go. We got to find that water, take that daily bath. It's good for promoting circulation. It's good for your brain. Give your brain both relaxation and stimulation, especially if you do hot and cold showers, back and forth. And then another principle of hygiene is just a clean, orderly living premise. If you can keep things clean, it's gonna make you much healthier. As far as disaster, when it comes to hygiene, it's a really big deal to keep human waste separated from your living quarters. If you have no way to flush the toilet because all of a sudden you have no electricity, so you can't run your pump, or you have no water, then you're going to have to dig a hole in the dirt somewhere, and you're going to have to cover that hole between each use. You can use dirt, you can use ashes, just it needs to be covered. And if you have a composting toilet, you hear kind of horror stories like, oh, I have a composting toilet, but if you don't have any way to clean that composting toilet, if you don't have water to clean it, which you're going to need water, but if you don't want to spend all your water trying to clean your toilet, then you need to just go dig a hole, get it away from your premise, and you're going to have to think that through and get that solved pretty quickly when you're in disaster. You need somewhere to sleep and eat that's free of rodents or bugs. Mosquito nets are extremely helpful. In some countries, you just buy them anywhere around here. You kind of have to try to find them. If you can order them online or whatever. Wash your hands is important before, preferably using water, not chemicals. So let's look at logos, which is the living word. As far as a health law, the creator of us says that, again, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. So the Gospel of John tells us that Jesus is the Word. He's the Logos. He's the living Word. And so we need to place these words into our minds every day, and it will renew our mind. That's a promise, because it's a living Word. So it's easy for us to place all of our emphasis on healing the outside or the physical aspect of a person. Like, we want to heal that rash. What do I do about this rash? Or paint our face or our hair, but we're not going to be successful in having healing unless we're taking in that living, healing Word of God. And we have to take that in daily and allow it to change us. So in some respects, treat your brain like a child, where the Bible says, train up a child in the way it should go, and when it's old, he will not depart from it. So if we train our minds with the Word of God, then when we get into another situation that's bad, these things will come back to us. So that's something we've got to take hold of every day, and we need to do that before the time of crisis. When I looked at different people who have been, for instance, in prison, they say, and especially in a prison where they don't have access to the Word of God, they say, I only memorized 40 verses in my whole life, and I wished I would have memorized more. Or what if we only memorized 4? Or what if we only, but you're going to all memorize at least 25, because we're going to give everybody a card of promises when I'm done here, and then you can have 25 promises, and that'll get you started if you don't already have more than that. So just remember that this relationship with God is something that takes experience and experimentation. So we got to just get started on it right away. Attitude is another law. You keep smiling, looking on the bright side. Refuse to believe that your situation is without some positive outcome. So our attitude is based on our beliefs, and it's our understanding of who we are and where we're going. Where did we come from, and where, if we know who we are and we know we're a child of God and we're going to go live with him for eternity, that's going to enable us to have a better attitude. When we live in the understanding that God is love and he has our best interest in mind, no matter what happens, then we can let go of trying to control that situation and have a positive attitude towards those around you, towards yourself and those around you. So let's look at water. We kind of looked at water a little bit already, but we are 70% water, which is kind of interesting because about 70% of our planet is covered with water. And so we have to have pure water inside and out to survive. So that's how you maintain hygiene, is water, cleaning with water. You can clean with chemicals, but it's just not quite the same as God's liquid for taking care of keeping us clean. All right, that was quick over water. So then we have another one. I guess I didn't put the little slide, but the next one I'm going to talk about is sabbatical. And this is actually the last one. And a sabbatical is a leave from work. It's a rest. So in a biblical understanding, we see that we were created to work and we were created to rest. So God gave us an evening and a morning. And he said, that's a day. And he starts with an evening and a morning. So that's really kind of exciting when you think about it. God starts our day with rest. He doesn't say, okay, I want you to work really hard and then I'm going to give you rest. Instead, he says, I'm going to give you rest and then I'm going to help you work on your day, right? And so that's just one of the neat things about God. It's really reassuring, it's comforting. God gives us rest. So then we can work, and he helps us with that. So when the sun sets on our planet, God designed that our bodies produce hormones such as melatonin to prepare our body for sleep. So we don't want to fight what God has created, right? Don't fight that preparation. So we want to keep the lights dim, want to avoid working on our computer or watching television. Well, that's quite kind of an amazing thing, When the sun goes down, people get home, they want to watch television. Well, and then they wonder why they don't sleep very well. Or they fall asleep while they're watching television and then they wake up and can't get back to sleep. So blue light and caffeine, and both of those inhibit melatonin, which is your sleeping, helps you to sleep. And then sleeping early in the night gives us better rest. So if you can go to sleep at 9 o'clock, and if you're somebody who wakes up at 3, don't stress out. Be happy. Now you got a really good situation going there, because if you get to bed early, or maybe you're going to bed at 12 and upset that you're waking up at 3, well, that's okay. Just go to bed earlier, because that's the better time to sleep. We have a system in your brain called the glymph, which is kind of a crazy name. Sounds silly because we're used to our lymph system, but in your brain it's called glymph system. And if you can get to sleep early in the night, that glymph is going to be able to clear out toxicity, clear out, just move circulation better in your brain. And that correlates with decreasing levels of disease, lower levels of Alzheimer's. Let's see here. Yeah, 8 hours of sleep is a good goal. And I always tell people, don't stress out if you lose, one night of sleep because you're stressed out and you need to talk to the Lord. Don't drive yourself to distraction to the point where you're going to go take some sort of medication that's then going to cause further problems. Just relax. That's a goal. Everybody's a little different. It's nice if you can get 8 hours, but try and get your hours in before and have a goal towards 8 hours a day. Okay, so there's promises. I know there's been times in my life where I'm doing something or I'm, in a situation and I am so stressed out and I can't go to sleep. And because I'm worried. And I think here's 2 promises that I've found helpful where you just have to say, you know what? I can't do this. I'm going to take this promise, I'm going to give it to the Lord, and you just claim those promises and go to sleep, right? So here they are, Psalms 4:8. I will both lay me down in peace and sleep, for thou only, Lord, only makest me dwell in safety. Proverbs 3:24, when thou liest down, thou shalt not be afraid, yea, thou shalt lie down, and thy sleep shall be sweet. Those are two. There's more promises than that, but those are just two really nice ones. So there's the sabbatical or the rest that we need every day. We need that rest. There's also a sabbatical lifestyle based on God's blessings. So we were created to work 6 days of the week, and we're given the seventh to rest. So, you think about this. We have the 24-hour day is determined by what? The earth going around, right? We have the month that's determined by the moon. We have the year that's determined by the rotation of the earth around the sun. But the 7-week cycle is only dependent upon that blessing and sanctification that God gave to it. So that is part of what I would call a sabbatical lifestyle based on God's blessing. So Jesus kept the Sabbath by joining others in formal worship. Sometimes he got in trouble when he did that, but he joined others every week. That was his custom. He walked, we see evidence that he walked in the fields with his disciples, and he healed people on the seventh day. And that's something that got him in trouble as well. But those are things that are, things that can be done on that seventh day. So in time of crisis, there's 3 times that the Bible tells us that keeping the Sabbath is a sign between God and his followers. And then the Bible also tells us that there's a time coming on this earth where the followers of God are going to have to flee from oppression. I mean, we can prep all we want, but the Bible says at some point, prep aside, you're not going to be acceptable. You're going to have to run. And so, and Jesus tells us in Matthew 24:20 that we are to pray that our flight is not on the Sabbath day. So I think that's very interesting. So in other words, God is asking us to ask him to help us rest in a time of severe crisis. So we really have a pretty kind God. He's just all about giving us rest, right? And so that's so here's a promise. I think this is my last one. Did you give me the time or something? But so if thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on thy holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord honorable, and shalt honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure, nor speaking thine own words, then thou shalt delight thyself in the Lord. And I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father. For the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it. That's in Isaiah. So, all right. So, cute little guy there. So, what's that? Does anybody have any questions? Thanks for listening to all that, because it was kind of fun. We have a lady who came to me and she said, we got to have 10 health laws. And so we sat down and just after church one day and kind of sketched those out. So we'll keep working on them. Gwen.
If you cannot sleep, do you recommend melatonin? Is that safe to use?
I have not used melatonin a lot for people. I guess it is something that can be used, and it seems to be fairly safe. I mean, some people are using it to help with cancer treatments and different things as well. I would probably look at, before I just threw melatonin at it, I would probably work towards trying to change the timing that you go to bed, change the timing of when you're exposed to light. You could do melatonin. I know a lot of parents who give their kids melatonin,
Really?
like melatonin gummy bears. We got to get to bed, and so I guess we don't really know the long-term effects of that. I mean, that's kind of like a hormone,
Yeah.
and so I would probably I'd limit it.
Yes.
I wouldn't just do it on a regular basis.
Mhm.
There's certain vitamins, like B vitamins, that can really help.
Calcium.
And with a lot of people going gluten-free, a lot of the B vitamins, they don't get them as
Mhm.
readily because they're not using whole grains
Mhm.
as much. So, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I just wanted your opinion on it. Some people use it, some people don't.
Yeah, right. I'd probably look towards more like magnesium, you know,
Yes.
things like magnesium and.
Yes,
Mhm.
exercise always does it, yeah, if you
Mhm.
exercise and get tired from work.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. So, sorry I didn't repeat that, but I think everybody, what do we think about melatonin? I guess you had a mic. Never mind. So, all right, I did not bring my little promise cards in here, and I want to give everybody a promise card pack. So I'm going to grab those. Or could somebody ask Martin for them and just tell him we need those promise cards. All right. So, any other questions? Just for fun. Did I put you all to sleep?
No, it was interesting how you said that the day begins with rest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was made me think about the fact that the creation of man, his very existence, began with rest because
Yeah.
God created us on the day of rest.
Yeah. Oh, did he? I didn't know that. I guess I hadn't thought about him.
Well, the seventh day.
Yes,
The
do
sixth
you need-
day, and then the seventh day.
I love these little promise cards, and